In this session, we're going to be looking at the applications of artificial intelligence, particularly in education, but also more broadly in society. So, there are a range of industrial applications of artificial intelligence, how it's being applied to pretty much every industry. But our focus, of course, will be around education and also looking at where AI may go in the near future. Yes, it's interesting to conjecture where it may go in the far future, but the immediate impact of artificial intelligence is something that not many educators, or indeed many researchers, are fully aware of. So, where can AI be applied in industry? Well, pretty much everywhere now. Anywhere where we can have access to a lot of data and we can analyze that data and improve processes. Now, originally, artificial intelligence was aimed at replicating and replacing human intelligence processes. But increasingly, we're finding other ways of utilizing artificial intelligence where we never used to use humans for doing such things, or at least it was far too impractical to do so, such as widespread surveillance systems. Yes, we could hire someone to stand on every corner and look at what's happening, police officers, but they couldn't necessarily coordinate all of their actions anywhere near the way that we can now do so with artificial intelligence enabled surveillance systems. Likewise, tracking even simple things such as we're seeing in this image of what's occurring in a store and making sure that the products are restocked to address seasonal or immediate needs. Now, yes, stores have had managers and they've looked after these processes and made decisions as to how much stock to have on hand and what to deploy into the store and all this sort of stuff. But it was always relatively hit and miss based upon some assessment and analysis by the manager and the limited data they had access to. But now we've got so much more data and real-time data and the ability to automatically order stock on the fly. So as soon as a can of beans is taken off a shelf, it can be detected and an order to replace that can be transmitted to whatever warehouse and stock supplies agency immediately. Now, this level of granularity and analysis and immediate feedback has never really been possible before, but now is becoming quite regular in many, many industries. Agriculture has been a huge one. Agriculture has always been at the advancement of technology because the profit margins have always been so small, and improvements in that have such a dramatic impact. So the uptake of automation and robotics and surveillance systems and so forth in agriculture has been profound, but not unsurprisingly. So robots and AI-enabled vision systems to track food production and animal health and a whole range of other systems are now quite regular in farms. Because if they can increase their yield by 1%, that's significant. And there's a lot of technologies that can achieve that. If they can make it 5% quicker to get the products from the farm to the supermarket, that's a significant saving and cost advantage. So we're seeing that definitely playing out in agriculture, which we might consider a very backward industry if we didn't really understand it. It's been around for, well, millennia, but agriculture is really one of the driving forces of many technological innovations. So there's a range of different ways we're now seeing AI and automation systems utilized in the agricultural processes, particularly now as we're also moving towards drip farming and micro-injections and micronutrients being added to plants and micro-injections being added to animals on a much more continuous basis, specifically addressing their immediate needs rather than just providing lots and lots of resources into the production processes that may or may not be needed, but are used because they have some overall impact. Being able to address that more finely means less wastage and greater productivity and profits. Now, aviation has been one of the leaders in artificial intelligence for many, many years. We've seen autopilots flying planes for decades. Because flying a plane is a difficult task, it takes a lot of attention, and having computerized systems being able to help with that has been a great improvement to safety and pilot fatigue and all those aspects. But we're now moving into a space where we're seeing completely autonomous vehicles, um, predominantly drones. Most people aren't too happy to fly around in a fully autonomous aircraft just yet, but certainly drones have been flying autonomously for quite a while now, and we're starting to see the military applications of those drones at the forefront of ethical discussions around AI systems, because some of these drones are being weaponized and used not just for surveillance, but also for warfighting capabilities, and having the decision to initiate destruction of targets and of humans by a machine does raise a lot of ethical issues. Because we know that even with humans making those decisions, a lot of mistakes are made, and automating those systems will continue those mistakes. But there is some potential to reduce the number of human mistakes. Certainly, that will definitely happen. But whether or not there'll be fewer mistakes made by AI systems, which can be more finely grained and programmed with various rules of engagement, as they're known, so as to reduce the what they call collateral damage, but inadvertent damage to other people that were not the intended targets of these machines. So we're also starting to see the use of AI in government, for good and bad. Yes, it's being utilised in the political process for voting to try to analyse the vast amount of data about the electorate and determine what messages to provide to various segments of the electorate in order to maximise votes. But AI is also being used more broadly in government to assist in decision making, better understanding where health services and emergency services and educational services need to be deployed. So with a greater understanding of demographics and where populations are increasing and decreasing and so forth, these services can be more targeted. Likewise, we're seeing the public interaction with government systems, which have long been the subject of frustration and humour. We're going to get a license renewal and so forth can often be a laborious and long, tedious process simply because of the inefficiencies and of human-based interactions. But with AI systems and computerized systems now being able to take a lot of that human interaction burden, where people can go through and do a simulated driving test before they do their real one. If they can go through answering a whole lot of questions online before they have to turn up and ask questions in person, and things like that can help reduce the waiting times and frustration levels of having to interact with governments. But also now, as we're starting to see more open government processes, the population can have a lot more access to this data. So being able to look at all the, say, flood level data, and being able to use AI systems to simulate where the impact of various floods on properties can help people make decisions as to where to buy land. All of these sorts of things are opening up now that we've got systems that allow us to interact with data a lot more effectively. And some other aspects around government, resource allocation. So where to send the garbage trucks? Where is most of the garbage being produced? This can be worked out dynamically, and AI systems can then plot the most efficient route for the garbage trucks to travel to maximize the amount of collection they achieve and improve that system. likewise for mail deliveries and things of that nature, which can involve a lot of data and a lot of complex systems processes to work out the optimized solutions. But AI systems are good at that. And they're great at working with really large data sets. Human beings reach a limit whereby there's so much data that can become overwhelming, as many teachers are finding. But AI systems love having more data. The more data, the more efficient and effective the systems are. So that's quite a distinction between how humans process these problems and how AI systems process them. Humans have a limit to their processing capability with data. AI systems, at least at this stage, have not. There's also the processes of having experts. How many driving instructors we've got available, how many experts in fire management. If there's an immediate bushfire and we've only got so many experts that can plot and work out what to do about this bushfire, having AI systems that can assist with that and can allow people with less expertise to also contribute to the decision-making processes can help with the overall system responses. And that can be applied in a whole range of things. Expertise is limited, but having AI systems that have been trained and learnt from experts can then spread that expertise where it's needed and when it's needed. And AI has been used a lot in making predictions. We've looked at futurism, but governments do a lot of that future planning, where to put in roads so that they're going to be needed in 20 years' time, rail links, airports. All of these things need to consider lots and lots of variables, lots and lots of information to make the best possible decision into the future. So these are aspects where AI systems can improve upon human-based decision-making processes. Also good at doing procedural tasks, things that just are repetitious and like filling in forms and answering questions at a help desk. These things AI can do more effectively than humans because they don't get frustrated and bored and snarky or sarcastic. They'll continue to provide a happy response to the public, even when that's not always what a human would respond as. And likewise, we can use lots and lots of data and lots of varieties of data that human beings have capacity limits around. And we're seeing that a lot when we start looking at surveillance systems, being able to take in masses and masses of imagery data, but also now auditory data, being able to monitor everyone's phone calls. Now, we've got laws in the country that say that can't happen, but we also have agreements with other countries that can share that sort of data. So while our government can't listen in on our phone calls, there's nothing that says that we can't help our friendly governments listen in on our phone calls and share that data with us. And these sorts of workarounds have been in place for a while now through various agreements. So other aspects in society, finance has been a massive change around AI systems. Of course, a lot of financial decisions are around looking at data and trying to make predictions as to what's going to happen with various markets and trends in order to maximize profits. Algorithmic trading on the stock exchange has now reached the point where it's creating its own trading processes, where trading occurs automatically when certain price points are met. And it's caused some problems where various things have occurred and then suddenly all the AI systems have started selling everything. Of course, that's what the algorithms have told them to do in these circumstances, which have then created massive problems. And while there have been such things happen with humans doing trades before, the fact that they can now occur in seconds rather than hours means it's much less, the checks and balances that are in place for human trading to cool down such processes are not up to task with these AI made transactions. So now there's new AIs being built in to monitor what's happening with the trading AIs so that they can respond and shut down things to cool down markets. So a lot of money and effort has gone into building AI systems that can make trades and make money from the stock exchange system. And indeed, even they can even extend to personal finance now. Most banking systems and trading systems allow individual investors and bankers and customers to analyze the data that they have around their own finances and the opportunities available to them to invest, and they can build their own portfolio processes and make their own trades and do things which in the past have needed specialist brokers and investors and fund managers to manage for them. But because the data is now available and we can have some AIs that can assist them in making decisions around what to do with these funds, then individuals can engage with these systems. Okay, another big area that most people don't see a lot of is around heavy industry, where we've seen robots in heavy industry for a long time, being able to replace the heavy lifting and also the repetitious aspect of many industrial jobs. But increasingly now we're seeing AI systems manage the entire production process. One of the popular ones at the moment is Tesla, which is pretty much trying to automate the entire production process of their vehicles to a reasonably high extent. But it's also extended to what was the dealership system, whereby most automobiles were sold by dealers. The manufacturers made them, they provide them to the dealers then worried about selling them and had a significant markup in profits to make money from that process. Because of the internet and AI systems available now, Tesla went down a different route whereby people could order directly over the internet, and it would then work out how to place the order for their vehicle and how to get it delivered, all behind the scenes. But AI systems would work out placing that order. The vehicle would then be manufactured. It would then be transported to the customer and so forth. And this eliminated the need for dealerships. Now, it was also part of the process was around repairs and servicing and all of those aspects, which were made easier with electric cars, which needed much less of that. But it provided an opportunity to circumvent all of that and greatly reduce the cost of the vehicles, because upwards of 50% of the cost of the vehicle, or the ongoing costs of ownership of a vehicle, went into servicing and repairs managed by dealers, where they made their profits from that process. So the disruption of industry is occurring in every industry, where there are opportunities now to analyze lots of data to provide different flows of products and materials, and what's called business to business transactions, whereby as you receive orders for your product, whatever you're making, the AI systems will analyze that, what resources and staff are going to be needed to fulfill those orders. They'll automatically negotiate deals with other AI systems providing the raw materials and other production flows into that. They may negotiate with work hire services to provide the staff to produce what's needed, all based upon the orders that were then placed via these systems. So it's all becoming very automated, incredibly efficient, but it is taking away that managerial leadership process that has been traditionally a significant aspect of many of these industrial processes. So a few other aspects around manufacturing: directed automation, whereby we reduce errors and have much more consistent results as a result of AI and robotic systems producing material. 24/7 production, because AI and robotic workers don't need to sleep. They can then work around the clock. And generally they're safer. There's a lot fewer accidents because the AI systems are more predictable, and that reduces errors and injuries and so forth, which all lead to reduced operating costs and greater profits for those that have invested in these AI systems, and also potentially environmental impacts. Because of the efficiencies around production and less wastage and less packaging and less other elements that have needed to be in place, that can reduce the ancillary impact of the production processes. So for now, with AI systems and so forth, and robotic systems, material can be flow through without all the packaging needed that would normally go in place to allow human workers to work effectively with those materials. So these are things that we're starting to see flow through. And the other big area is around medicine and healthcare. AI is having a major impact upon medical diagnosis, treatment systems, training of medical staff, and medical research. But it's also having an impact upon patient interactions. So one of the very first areas was around imaging and the idea of being able to detect and make diagnosis, where AI systems were 10 years ago were able to show that they were more effective than humans in doing that sort of thing. And they were able to make much better diagnoses, which were then able to improve treatment processes. But then we also had a whole process around telehealth, whereby the experts, the surgeons or the doctors, could operate or diagnose and interact with patients via video conference or remote robotic arms operating thousands of kilometers away from the surgeon and things of that nature. So lots of things happening in the medical space, but also around medical records. AI systems need data, and having massive amounts of data allows AI systems to do much more effective things. So being able to have access to medical records helps patients get better diagnosis and that sort of stuff. But that's not their real main benefit. The big benefit is being able to know, okay, there's a spike in the number of people getting the flu in this suburb. We can then send more flu shots and encourage people to get flu vaccines in this suburb. So really targeted global, they're currently working on global systems. At the moment, it's more state-based or localized systems. But there is now a move by the World Health Organization to globalize this process, particularly around pandemics, so that the data is being collected and immediate responses can be put in place to provide interventions to stop pandemics or to stop infections becoming pandemics. And we're also seeing that around the creation of new drugs, where now we're using AI systems and robotic systems to be able to process the drug treatment systems in a way that was unimaginable in the past, where what used to take years can now be done in months and indeed sometimes even weeks. And so responding to the changes in circumstances around diseases, particularly infectious diseases, can be much more effective through the use of AI systems. Another contentious area is around human resources and recruiting. The idea of AI systems being able to sift through all of the applicants for employment and choose the most desirable applicant from all of that data, and to do so in an unbiased and efficient way is very attractive to human resource recruiters and things of that nature. But some of the aspects around that is that some of these AI systems are also now being used in other areas of HR, such as detecting when employees are, how they're working with other employees, doing their performance reviews and things of that nature, and analysing those and matching employees with other employees to work better and more effectively in teams. All good things that managers do and human resource staff work on. But AI is now also being used in the termination processes. And this is causing a little bit more concern, because being hired by an AI may not be so confronting, but being fired by an AI um, is causing a fair bit more concern than people initially thought might occur. And that these systems are happening. And because AIs can work with large data sets and large populations, um, they are now being deployed to make these decisions. So not just choosing who to hire, but also choosing who to promote, who to employ in various positions, but also choosing when they should be let go, or when positions should be terminated. Using their algorithms and their understanding of the workflow processes, they can do it more efficiently from an efficiency perspective. Whether or not they do it more caringly and more compassionately is up for debate, but HR systems have never been known um, too much for that aspect of their role in society. Another big area is around marketing, and this comes into advertising, where analyzing, again, lots of data about who's buying what, who's interested in buying what, has been an area of expertise for marketers, but AI systems have been able to do that at least as effectively, if not far more effectively, than human marketers. Um, so again, it's an area of contention, but being able to look at patterns and work out what things are interesting people at different times, when they're likely to buy things, when sales can influence their buying habits, a whole lot of aspects that can relatively easily be programmed into AI systems, and AI systems that can learn from all of the data that they're collecting can be very good at forecasting what's going to be needed and what can be produced and things of that nature. And analysis of buying patterns and what makes people want to buy various things is being explored through the use of neural networks to um, understand all of these things, because it's a huge amount of data, a lot of variables. And yes, marketers do a good job at trying to work all this out, but AI systems, because they can just work with so much more data and so many more considerations, are proving to be more effective in these roles. We're also seeing it in the media, where AI systems are being used to help analyze viewing patterns, what makes people want to buy a magazine or a newspaper, or watch a particular TV show, or buy a ticket to go and see a movie. And all of this is able to be analyzed. And now, particularly with online systems where people are consuming a lot of content through the internet, through online newspapers and TV shows and websites, all of this data is being collected about viewing habits and interests, to the extent that now TV production is utilizing that information to determine what TV shows to make. But with Netflix and things of that nature, it's now being extended to the processes around direction and production, where which actors to hire are being determined by the AI systems based upon analysis of the viewers as to which ones they're finding more engaging or attractive, or they're more likely to watch because of particular actors or particular types of actors, their physical features, their acting styles, all of those natures. Those decisions, which producers have always made, but are now being made much more in an autonomous way. But it's getting to the point whereby even the scripts are being determined by the AI systems, looking at which aspects of which scripts the viewers are relating to and find interesting and engaging. And they do that by looking at when people turn off watching particular TV shows, and how long they watch for, and all of this sort of stuff. So in the past, they've had what's called the Nielsen ratings and so forth, where they ring up a whole lot of people and ask them what TV shows they're watching. Now that data is able to be collected from millions upon millions of viewers, second by second. So while in the past they've had to make these decisions based on a few hundred people answering some phone calls, Now they've got that data from millions of people continuously, so they can make these decisions much more accurately. But that is having concern because they're now making relatively bland content because it's aiming for the greatest possible demographic. They want the greatest number of people watching as possible because that then helps their advertising and so forth. Likewise with movies, they've worked out the formula for how to make the movie that people are going to come and pay money to come and watch. But once that formula is determined, then there's a great impetus for people to keep using that formula and keep making movies that are relatively the same. We're seeing that a lot with the superhero movies at the moment. They're all pretty much the same, just different superheroes, different situations, but the same sort of processes happening. Yes, they're proving popular. Same with action movies. Pretty much the same sort of action sequences happen, almost the same sort of actors. They do the same sort of things, but people are continuing to come back and watch those. They like them. Once that's determined, then producers will keep making them. And of course, the military has utilized AI systems for a long time, being able to understand the complexity of what happens in a modern battlefield with all the information that's coming in and being able to understand it and direct military hardware and weaponry where it's most needed is all being enhanced through AI systems. But also even with particular machines or devices in the military, such as different weapon systems like a missile, being able to more accurately use AI vision systems to hit a target is improving the efficiency of various systems in that respect. Even things in the creative industries. Music is using more and more AI all the time, where there's now AI being composing music. And just as what was done with Netflix and the production of movies and TV shows, it's now also being applied to music, analyzing what people like to listen to, even what sort of tones and beats people are engaging with at any particular time. Now, of course, musicians have always done this, but now AI systems can access masses of data from all of the online music listening apps to work out, okay, people are listening to these songs. These songs have got these characteristics. Let's now make another song that has similar characteristics, and people are more likely then to listen to that. Now, this is great. We're producing lots of music that people are interested in and want to listen to, but it does potentially reduce the creativity in coming up with new forms of music and new genres and approaches. But there are technologies that also are assisting with that. It's now possible to explore a lot more types of music, and an individual artist can be much more exploratory through the use of various AI systems and automatic music making systems than they may have been able to achieve in the past. So while AI can make things bland, it can also democratize systems and allow more people to be engaged with the creative processes, be that movie making or TV making or music making, and enhance creativity overall through those processes. So there's a couple of apps I'd like you to have a look at, and we'll talk about in the tutorials. Semiconductor allows you to be the conductor of an orchestra, and using the webcam on your computer, it will detect your arm movements, and you can conduct your own orchestra and see how you can create music in that way. And there's a range of these tools that you can utilize to help make music in new and evocative ways. But we're also seeing this be applied in a lot of other areas. Writing is an area that's of concern to academics at the moment, whereby we've got systems in place that can automatically write. Now, we've had summarizing systems for a long time. It's been in Microsoft Word for a decade or two, where it will summarize a larger chunk of text to make it more succinct. But we've now got systems that will take lots and lots of data inputs and create new work, be that novels or scripts or reports, um, that circumvent a lot of the laborious aspects of writing. Um, but just as we've seen in movies and music, novel writing is being subjected to AI quite extensively. Of course, again, we've got lots of data on who's reading, particularly now we've got online reading systems, and what aspects of different books people are engaging with, what characters they're engaging with, what settings and genres and things of that nature. And from all of that data, we can then work out, okay, what sort of book will people likely to buy and engage and read? And we can then automate those processes to produce those. If not AI writing them, but at least providing all the data about how to write them for authors. Now, AI plus writing is a set of tools developed here in Australia by Google that assists in the writing process, where you can define characters and generate ideas, and you can set all of these different things in place, and then it will fill in the text with the characters you've defined and the ideas that you've incorporated, and it will produce a short novel for you.
I'm a writer. It's weird how the moments that you least expect it are the moments of revelation.
I love this story, and then it's like a roller coaster. It's like a big dip, and I'm like, oh, I hate this.
The first time I ever started to write was on an iPad.
The Google Creative Labs introduced us to machine learning tools that are trained on sets of data, a corpus. I know that word. You import the prompt and it uses what it knows from the data that it's been trained on to spit out a coherent response.
I used the ML tools to navigate my own authority over my writing. How much do I know about my character, but how much could someone else know about the character?
There's one where you can talk to a character, which I find really useful. It spat out this line that was like, I have broken water over too many people who didn't deserve it. That's, breaking water. Is that like crying? Is that like raining? Like what? It set me off on this whole thing. My sister accused me of cutting off my snakes to spite my head, so I cut off my own head to spite her.
The woman sitting beside the sensible man has lost her eyelids. Her eyes are completely circled.
I was able to get a whole outline of a story that I wanted just by chatting.
She thinks that I don't love myself enough, that I'm carting my head around just for attention.
It made me aware of how randomness affects my work. I thought I was a very methodical writer, and by using these words, I was forced to realize that I could actually harness noise. When I consider the relation between myself and a memory of myself, it's the differences that I obsess over.
This was a lot more about process, having an element of play in the actual construction of the writing. Kind of really got me out of my head a lot.
I feel so trapped by my thoughts and my patterns of thinking. And these tools, they spit out some random nonsense that is strange. And these sentence constructions that are so novel.
I think in the future I would use it to question a stagnant piece of work. ML tools is a good middle ground. There is like what you look to for influence and inspiration and information. And then there's you and like your subconscious as a writer. And then I think it sits really nicely in between that. Her face has lost some texture. She is frozen.
What I meant to say, at least today, is I'm sorry and I cannot live inside the past forever.
So we can see that these systems are currently being used and will certainly be used more extensively into the future as we look to expand not only in education but in most other industries. Now for children, AI has been used quite extensively. Many toys and games now incorporate various AI systems that allow children to interact more with these devices, be they dolls that can talk to them, but not just pull a string and speak some random words, but actually interpret what the child is saying and respond in a way that's appropriate to what has been said, or can detect using cameras and so forth how the child is feeling and respond in various ways. So there's a whole range of technologies being built into the elements of child's play that are going to have a significant impact into the future. So in teams, share an idea that you've thought of as we've explored these industrial applications as to where AI may be impacting upon society and industry. So, what of education? That's our main focus, and AI is certainly beginning to have a significant impact within education as well. So, one of the areas we've been talking about a fair bit is around personal tutors and being able to have a device that allows students to interact with and receive similar interactions as they would with a human tutor. Being able to ask and receive answers to questions, being able to have different material presented to them in different ways, and also to provide encouragement and support. We've also got an area that's emerging called Ambient Informatics. And this is an idea that information is everywhere around us. We constantly have access to information, far more so than we have in the past. Our students now can grab a device or grab a computer and ask a question with Google or whatever and receive an answer back. So this is quite different to how we used to engage with knowledge and work through study. And we need to incorporate this into the learning processes. Even the idea of being able to access a calculator automatically now, where in the past maths teachers would say, you're never going to have a calculator with you all the time, so you need to be able to do these mathematical problems. Well, that's no longer true. Now we do have a calculator with us all the time. And not just a calculator, but a translator, an encyclopedia, a whole range of different tools within our various mobile devices or computerized devices. And these are getting smarter and smarter. And they're now going to be able to anticipate our needs. So they may detect when we're trying to make a calculation and provide us with the answer even before we've thought to ask the question. How education is going to cope with these sort of aspects is going to be a dilemma. Another big area that's of interest to teachers has been automated assessment. Marking assessment has always been a bane of teaching, but being able to have AI systems, computerized automated systems now, to go through and automatically make judgments on students' work allows us to focus more on analysing the students and interacting with the students and engaging with students rather than on the processes of book work, going through and marking and looking at their work and working out various elements that we need to then discuss with them. If the AI can provide us with that information or provide the students with that information, we can then focus more on other aspects. Now, in the past, the concern has always been that AI wouldn't be able to make accurate assessments of students. But as we've been looking at it the last couple of weeks, it's very clear now that AI can make at least as, if not more, effective judgments around student decision making and processes than human assessors, down to quite complex creative writing processes. Not in its entirety yet. There are still outliers where we still need humans to come in and fix up aspects that AI can't cope with. But the thing we know about AI is if it's got the data and if it's got the time to process all of this information and work with it, it gets better and better. And we can certainly see that happening into the future. So again, post to teams an application in artificial intelligence that you can see being applied to education that we haven't mentioned yet. So what about the future? Where are things going? Some of the big issues at the moment are around deep fakes, whereby for the last 20 years or so, it's been recognized that we could use Photoshop or other image editing tools to fake an image. And that's been of concern, but we've worked through that. But now it's happening with video, whereby any video can be faked. And particularly, we can replace the faces with another actor. So We can also then use our own facial features to superimpose over a well-known person and make it look as though they're saying things that we want them to say rather than what they did say. And this, of course, is raising concern. Politicians don't like it at all because they can have their own image saying things that they never actually said. But it can also be used in the film industry. And we've started to see dead actors now being used in films where their images are being able to be portrayed in a realistic way where they are no longer available. Now, of course, actors are not too happy with that because, yes, okay, you can use it of dead people, but you can also use it of live people. And the idea that we can make films with live actors using their image to create these fake avatars that then perform in the films is of obvious concern to actors. And the consequence of that is clearly that there'll be completely computerized actors, where again we'll use all that information about what makes an actor attractive and engaging and interesting to an audience and create our own actors, because we don't have to use real people. We can create computer generated actors and have them perform in films. Now, it's not quite photorealistic yet, but it's getting closer and closer every year. It's been around for 30, 40 years. Max Headroom in MTV was a computerized actor in the 70s. But the quality and the convincing nature of these actors has been improving every year, and it will continue to improve. At the moment, they're still really having to use human actors with a whole lot of data points on them to capture the realistic movements. But enough of that data is being collected now, particularly now we've got surveillance systems being able to automate that collection process, that we're going to be able to create incredibly realistic avatar actors that will be indistinguishable from human actors. And that's going to change the nature of the entertainment industry. But we can think about that in education. At the moment, you're watching my head here discuss this with you. That could be animated and automated. So an AI could be providing this information to you, and it would be indistinguishable from a human teacher. Likewise may happen in classrooms. And we can say, well, it won't happen necessarily in the physical classroom. But new holographic technology has now emerged over the last couple of years, where we're now able to project a hologram, a digital representation of someone, onto a stage. It's happening in some lecture theatres. So in your classroom, we could project a hologram of yourself that your students could move around and see from various angles. And that hologram then doesn't necessarily have to be then of a real person. It could be of a digital avatar. In fact, it actually becomes a little bit easier when it's a digital avatar. It's already digitized. So this idea of education being separated from all of these technologies is becoming less and less every year. This is just an example of one of the deepfake videos of the Russian president. And another one of another US president or an ex-president. So we've sort of touched on a number of different problematic areas of artificial intelligence. But where can AI be used for good? There are actually groups focusing intently on this because we can see the potential negatives, but we also want to make sure we harness the potential positives. And there is an organization and website that's called AI for Good that is looking at all the different ways we can use AI to address some of the really big issues that have caused problems in the world. One of the ones they're looking at is homelessness and using satellite imagery to detect homeless people, but also looking at different images of homes and to work out where poverty exists. And then more resources can be applied into those spaces to address those issues, where in the past getting that information has been more difficult. So these systems are certainly in place. Here in Queensland government is using AI systems to analyse pools and to work out whether or not they've got appropriate pool fencing. To then, because they can use satellite imagery and they can look at millions of properties very easily, and they can then use the AI systems to detect what's likely a pool and what's likely not a pool, and what's likely a fence and what's not likely a fence. These systems can then analyze all of this, and they love the big data sets, and can then provide a list of infringements whereby these owners are likely to have pools that aren't properly fenced and are posing a danger to the community according to our laws. And so then inspectors can go around and verify that and give fines and improve pool fencing. Just one example. The other area we've touched on a fair bit is around job searching and seeking a place in the job market. But it can also be used as a positive, because we can understand, because these AI systems are being used for recruiting, we can understand then the recruiting process more. And we can then look at how people can tailor their own job searching processes and use your own AI to apply for jobs, to present yourself in the most effective way that is going to be attractive to the AI job search engines and or employment engines. And your job search AI can then interact with the recruitment AI to maximize your potential. And indeed, these systems can then be left running continuously, constantly looking for the best new opportunity for you. So you don't have to think about, oh, okay, maybe this year I'll start looking at applying for a new job. It's constantly updating your resume. It's constantly looking for opportunities that match your skill set and your capabilities, and letting you know when opportunities arise. So it doesn't have to be all on the side of the employers. We can use these systems on a constant basis as employees to be looking to maximize our own opportunities. So again, think about a future advance in AI that hasn't been talked about yet. Now, the last clip we're going to look at is around how AI is being applied at the moment in China. And it looks at how AI is being used in schools. So let's have a look. Oops.
Teachers at this primary school in China know exactly when someone isn't paying attention. These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled a cashless economy where people make purchases with their faces. A giant network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition helps police monitor citizens. Meanwhile, some schools offer glimpses of what the future of high-tech education in the country might look like.
Good job.
Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels. Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor how often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These gadgets have alarmed Chinese netizens. But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education. A program that's supposed to boost students' grades while also feeding powerful algorithms.
为了就是国家的这个研究呀、发展呀，我觉得是没有问题的。
The government has poured billions of dollars into the project, bringing together tech giants, startups, and schools. We got exclusive access to a primary school a few hours outside of Shanghai to see firsthand how AI tech is being used in the classroom. For this 5th grade class, the day begins with putting on a brain wave sensing gadget. Students then practice meditating.
现在想象我们眉心有一点柔和的光芒绽放。
The device is made in China and has 3 electrodes, 2 behind the ears and 1 on the forehead. These sensors pick up electrical signals sent by neurons in the brain. The neural data is then sent in real time to the teacher's computer. So while students are solving math problems, a teacher can quickly find out who's paying attention and who's not.
说明这段时间他是有点在那走神的。
A report is then generated that shows how well the class was paying attention. It even details each student's concentration level at 10-minute intervals. It's then sent to a chat group for parents.
就是他可以看到每个人的评分。
The reports are detailed, but whether these devices really work and what they exactly measure isn't as clear. We were curious if the headbands could actually measure concentration, so one of our reporters tried on the device.
但我没有感觉自己特别集中。
This is a new technology with still fairly little research behind it.
Theodore Zanto is a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco. He was surprised to learn that this tech, called electroencephalography, also known as EEG, is being used in the classroom on children. It's usually used by doctors in hospitals and labs.
EEG is very susceptible to artifacts. And so if you are itchy or just a little fidgety, or the EEG wasn't set up properly so that the electrodes didn't have a good contact, affects the signal.
Despite the chances for false readings, teachers told us the headbands have forced students to become more disciplined.
上课回答我的问题，就是他们的声音会比平常更响亮。
Teachers say the students now pay better attention during class, and that has made them study harder and achieve higher scores.
上课认真听讲，作业做的基本上是全对的。
But not all students are as enthusiastic.
所以有时候想法就是自己感觉是脑筋，我感觉这里有个紧的。
This 5th grader, whom we caught dozing off in class, told us his parents punish him for low attention scores. And that kind of data adds a new kind of pressure for students.
想啊，如果在一次考试全班人都考了95分以上，就你考了一个85，你会不会感觉你有一种
Companies we interviewed said the data can go to government-funded research projects. We spoke to parents who were unclear about where the data ended up, and they didn't seem to care too much. Santos says there's likely no privacy protection at all.
In a classroom, if you're trying to make an assessment of an individual student, you really can't anonymize it.
Experts and citizens alike are sounding alarms about various aspects of the country's huge push into artificial intelligence. These classrooms are laboratories for future generations. And while these new tools may potentially help some 200 million students raise their grades, just how this all works out won't be apparent until they become adult citizens.
So, some interesting applications into the future in education. And before you, well, in case you're thinking that that's a really fantastic idea and has no real negatives, we'll discuss some of these in the tutorial. I've also looked at using these EEG headsets and use them on students, but I like to also use them on teachers and to get monitoring data and reports on how effective teachers are, how much attention teachers are paying, and you can apply that to other workers. So while we may think it's perfectly fine to impose this sort of monitoring and surveillance on students, how we would feel when it's being imposed upon ourselves is often different. And these are things that we need to understand in society today as to where artificial intelligence is going in education and what the potential implications are as various pathways are explored. And these are some things we'll discuss in the tutorials.